So, you remember how I said the last episode might have been the best episode of My Hero Academia so far? Yeah, I was wrong, because it's this episode, episode 8, that is truly and honestly the best episode of My Hero Academia ever created. And I'm here to tell you why. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to do my breakdown and review for this episode of My Hero Academia Season 8, the final season, Episode 8. There's a lot, and I honestly mean a lot, that we need to go over in this episode. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, this might be the longest breakdown video that I've ever made, so you better have your butt in your seat and food on a plate, because this is going to be a long one. And before I get more into it, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I make My Hero Academia content, as well as these breakdown and reviews. So if you like this type of content, leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And with that out the way, let's dive right into the episode. And to start off, the episode is titled Izuku Midoriya Rising, which takes its name from manga chapter 422, as well as this episode covers new material from chapters 421, 422, and 423. And when it comes to this episode, it has the most emotional highs of the entire series and personally made me cry even while writing and editing this video. And to start off, the episode begins very much like manga chapter 400. And the episode begins like in manga chapter 421, with the members of Class 1A who came from every location where a major battle was held, more or less, coming together, with the anime putting more focus on each character and what they say, as we get the Avengers level group shot from Endgame, which I would say, while is good in the anime, was probably better in the manga art-wise. However, the anime does add to this moment by showing characters appearing in the background that would appear in the wide shot prior to it. For example, before we get the double page wide shot adapted into the anime, we see Shiketsu High students Seiji and Kami. We also get to see Class 1B characters such as Tetsu, Kurohiro, as well as Manga, alongside other pro heroes such as 13, Hound Dog, Cement Toss, Gang Orca, as well as former heroes such as Death Arms. As well as the anime does pretty much its best to include even all of the background characters seen in the manga in that double page spread, including members from Class 1B such as Kendo, Pony, Shishida, Rin, Ibarra, as well as some random heroes, as well as Gentle Criminal. So this part of the anime was as faithful to the manga as possible, but from here on out, it's going to be more than just faithful, but a true adaptation that improves upon the story. And after the opening, we actually cut over to All For One reflecting on how he survived the attack by Deku, which is due to the fact that he lost his obsession, aka he lost his younger brother. Which means that there is nothing left for him to break, which is actually emphasized by the anime by adding a scene of Yoichi disappearing from in front of All For One, as well as the anime adding a sequence of All For One having a hole where his heart used to be, but we already know that All For One didn't have a heart. But alongside that, we also do get some cool animation sequences of All For One's body transforming, as we get the big moment from Sarah retorting the claim from All For One about how pain and struggle makes you stronger, as we get the cool reveal of Shoto and Endeavor coming from the portal with a flash fire fist combo on All For One, and how the anime also expands on their reveal in this moment from the flashback, showing how in more detail in the anime, Rei and Furumi are being carried away, while also showing Endeavor standing up after he is riled by the words of Natsuo to continue fighting, and how this along with a lot more smaller additions to the anime, makes for a better presentation and story being told in the anime versus what we got in the manga. And speaking on the manga, this is where All For One begins his assault on the heroes once again, because the anime from here on out expands and adds to the action sequences, such as showing Gang Orca being sent away by a different attack that we see actually hits Burnin, which in the manga appears to be one singular attack, as well as the anime does something amazing by adding in more members of Class 1B that were not overtly present in this final fight, which was an unexpected but welcome change that adds more impact to this moment. But we're going to actually cut away from All For One in this moment as we cut over to Deku, as we see that his arms are fully healed back before he lost them in his fight against Tomura. And the anime does change this from the manga by having the rewind be instant versus taking its time and lasting a little bit longer in the manga, as we see the rewind energy in these panels in the manga, which is absent from the anime. And what isn't absent from the anime, and as shown in the manga, is that Deku reveals that he still has the embers of One For All, as he gets his iconic new All Might shirt and bandages that are going to be carried on, not just in this episode, but actually to the volume of the final volume of My Hero Academia, volume 42. And how these bandages and shirts are sort of showing that the civilians are wanting to help Deku in this moment, as we also get Aoyama also wanting to repay the favor to Deku by lending a hand to help Deku close the gap to get closer to All For One. As well as in this moment, not only do we get the reveal of Shuro Kuma beginning to fail, we also get some changes from the manga to the anime, including when Deku is actually telling Eraserhead that he gave up One For All. The anime cuts the flashback of him and All Might running alongside the beach. As well as the anime, when Deku is explaining that he still has the embers of his quirk left, the anime adds a visual of him clutching the flames or the embers of One For All in his hands, similar to how All Might was doing the exact same thing during his fight against All For One in Kamina. Also, on that note, when Aoyama is caught by All For One's attack when supporting Deku, the anime actually shows him blowing it apart with his navel laser, which is just implied in the manga. So a lot of small things were really added to this moment, and like I said, we're going to continue to see more of these small things added to make these scenes even better. And here is where the action begins, with an added scene of All For One fighting the heroes and sending them away, as well as we have the running line that starts from here with everyone shouting at Deku to do his best. And it's from here where we get some great action moments expanded upon and added upon in the anime, involving many members from Class 1A and 1B, which includes a sequence where Hagakure is able to bend the laser to block and to redirect the attack from All For One. The anime shows the attack completely breaking up and exploding after a few seconds, while in the manga, Invisible Girl Hagakure is just redirecting it while electromagnetic railgun is being used. And that railgun is actually something that was created and powered by Momo and Kaminari, who are able to fire it off, as the anime adds and clearly shows the actual round that was fired by the railgun. As well as a few of the smaller moments where nothing really changes includes when characters like Sato, Ojiro, Sero, Koda, Kaibara, and Ibara, as well as Shishida, help destroy All For One's attacks, while Shoji and Froppy are carrying Deku forward. And what's interesting about this moment is that Deku finally refers to Froppy as Tsuyu instead of Asui. Also, very similar to what we got in the manga, is Kiri, Mina, as well as Fat Gum stopping an attack that was aimed at Deku. But it's from here where the anime does add the next few scenes a lot more justice by adding some new anime original scenes that are expanded upon sequences seen in the manga, which include a combination attack combining Present Mike and Jiro's quirks into a combo attack that looks very amazing. We also get to see some additional action of Kendo and Tetsu destroying some armed tendrils created by All For One, as well as getting to show an added sequence of Mineta pinning down some of All For One's tendril. And that isn't even the best part, because as we're approaching probably the best part of the episode, as All For One realizes why every hero is still fighting and it's due to Deku and his weakness, we hear a familiar tone in the background. Yes, you heard that correctly. We get "You Say Run" in this moment, which is very apt because Deku is going to be running from the beginning to the end of this song. And this was something that I very much expected from this segment of the episode. And while we do get a few added moments of action from characters like Ida, Death Arms, and Gentle in particular, with the anime briefly showing him blocking a tendril with an elastic bubble as he helps Deku move forward, what makes this entire sequence hit like a truck of emotions are the smaller additions towards the end, and I will try to go over every small detail to show you why this is probably the best scene in My Hero Academia. So let's go over what makes this segment so great, and let's go over the things that typically remain the same between the anime and the manga, which for the most part is showing how everyone is telling Deku to do his best, from both his friends to other heroes, even to the movie characters. And this is where we get a nice addition, because in the manga, the only movie characters that we see is Rudy and Melissa. However, the anime adds the kids from the second movie, Katsumo and Mahoro, as well as Gulio and Anna from My Hero Academia's fourth movie, You're Next. As well as we do get the anime expanding a sequence after Ida remembers what Uraraka says about Deku's hero name, as we get the sequence of Uraraka and Pixie Bob on the helicopter, as Pixie Bob is showing Uraraka Deku on her phone. And very much like in the manga, we have Uraraka telling Deku to do his best. However, the anime does show the full context of what Deku means, which is in reference to how Uraraka believes that Deku sounds like "do your best" in Japanese, as well as this moment does add Uraraka shedding a tear as she tells Deku to do his best, which isn't in the manga. And showing someone cry can make you feel like you want to cry as well. And even then, we get very much what remains the same between the anime and the manga of the US president telling his general to send all the pro heroes to Japan, as the anime depicts the panels from the manga of a bunch of random people and people that Deku knows from the manga shouting to do their best at Deku. But how it's done is very different from how it's done in the manga. In the manga, we just get a page of them telling Deku to do his best. However, we have in the anime of them being translucent and behind Deku as Deku is running towards All For One. And there are differences between the scenes that are used in the manga and the scenes that are used in the anime. For example, the anime uses some of the manga panels in this sequence, but not all of them. Shows the lady in the cafe from the front so that we can see both her face and the faces of the people next to her. However, the anime does add a little bit more to this as well, because we get a bunch of added still frames of characters such as Kami, Shindo, Can't Ya See Kid, Akbar, and the kids from Bakugo and Shoto when they're getting their provisional licenses, as well as we get to see pro heroes like Hawks, Ryuku, Kamui Woods, Lady Nagging, Gang Orca, Cirrus, Present Mike, 13, Hound Dog, and Cementos. As well as we get to see other students such as Mei, Shinzo, Mirio, the third-year business student, members from Class 1B such as Kendo, Kurohiro, Rin, Jack Mantis, Tetsu, Manga, Kodai, and we get everyone from Class 1A except Bakugo, Uraraka, and Deku for obvious reasons. So, something that I want to sort of correct in the video is involving the page where we see a bunch of heroes flash on screen before Deku lands that punch on All For One. This is actually a reference to an additional page / change in manga volume 41 of My Hero Academia, where an entire page of Deku about to strike all for one in Tomura's body has a bunch of characters in the bottom panel, and a lot of these characters that we see appear during those flashing moments where Deku strikes all for one. So while this is not necessarily a change added by the anime itself, it is a change made to the volume that the anime adapts, because the anime typically adapts the volumes rather than the weekly releases. So that's something that I wanted to bring up. And what's also very interesting about this moment is that when the anime shows this moment of Deku jumping up close to get in the punch on All For One, the scene of him winding up his punch while these other heroes that I listed are cheering him on resembles the moment he first used One For All during the entrance exam, which is a cool callback from early season 1, but it's not the only callback that we actually get in the sequence. Because, like in the manga, we also get All Might raising his fist up to the air as it's revealed that the fighter pilots who are a part of Star and Stripe's crew actually survived thanks to All Might, which is the moment that he's declaring Deku was always the greatest hero to him. We actually get a depiction of Deku transitioning to the past version of himself, going from his normal look to going to what we assume is his proto or his first hero costume, to what he looked like as a student in middle school at the moment where he went to try and save Bakugo against the sludge villain. But the anime also does something amazing before Deku lands this hit on All For One, because very much like in the manga, in the anime we see Inko running towards the screen to cheer on Deku to do his best. However, this is where we get the second reference from season 1 in this segment of her running towards Deku in a very similar manner as Deku running to save Bakugo from the sludge villain, showing the idea of heroism not just running in the family, but showing that anyone and everyone can be a hero to someone else, whether professionally or not, which emphasizes a key theme of My Hero Academia. And as we approach that major, beautiful hit landed on All For One by Deku, before the actual hit lands, the anime adds an expanded action sequence of Deku rushing towards All For One, but also adding to his punch the rainbow coloring effect representing One For All, which was not in the manga, but is in the anime, as we see him land that attack, as we see a whole bunch of rainbow stars representing One For All, as we get the title drop of the episode being Izuku Midoriya Rising. So yeah, I spent so much time on this sequence because it was done extremely well, if not perfectly. And is probably going to be one of the highest peaks of My Hero Academia from how they were able to adapt the material from the manga to the anime while adding to it to make it feel even better and for you to feel the full force, if not greater emotional weight of this sequence, which I can say, which was very impactful for me. But now we are nearing the end of the episode, as well as the fight, with the anime extending the punch more in the anime than in the manga, while adding in the vestiges of One For All symbolically hitting All For One in Deku's place as they are going in order of them obtaining the quirk of One For All. And this is very symbolic due to this being the combination of everything that they've done and all of them actually playing a role in defeating All For One. But what's also very interesting about this sequence is how it was basically foreshadowed in the anime OP, with the shining light being the explosion of Deku hitting All For One, as well as All For One later on activating his quirks in an explosion of energy, as well as it leads into the sequence of the heroes looking up at All For One and believing that he's being defeated at the moment. He wasn't, but how can you assume that that wasn't the case? But how the anime shows his body beginning to deteriorate in the anime, which was not necessarily the case in the manga. However, what very much is the case in the manga is how this did not kill All For One as he begins to reconnect his body again. And that when this happens, we do get the anime adding more reactions of the people to the scene, such as Soji and Froppy and Mineta looking up believing that All For One is defeated. And as All For One reconnects his body and tries to transfer himself into another person, this is where we get a few added still frames of characters still being attacked by the tendrils, as he is talking about how he wants to put All For One into Deku or any random person, as we see Deku going in for another attack. And it is here where we get the end of Kurogiri / Shirokumo saying his goodbyes to Aizawa and Yamada as he goes in to stop Deku from hitting Tomura, or should I say All For One, as he wants to save Tomura. And this is where the anime adds some moments to really show the full weight of how Kurogiri feels about Tomura, because the anime adds on to this moment to the flashback of Spinner being one of Tomura's friends, as well as the anime adds a original still frame, not in the OG manga, but is a still image of Shirokumo saving Sushi, a cat that he, Yamada, and Aizawa were planning on adopting, which may be the first time that the series has adopted a actual panel from a completely different manga, which does add to the moment of Kurogiri trying to save Tomura in this moment, because it's both in his nature as both Kurogiri as well as Shirokumo to help someone who is in need, and how this small addition to this moment really adds to the final moments where eventually Bakugo comes in and completely shatters Kurogiri, because we have to remember he was still in fact a Nomu, so he was already dead. But now we're reaching the final moments of the episode as well as this fight, because as Deku begins to land the final punch, the anime adds to the dialogue of Deku calling out All For One as being no demon lord but a pathetic human by smashing through and adding a sequence of Yoichi and Kudo being chased by All For One, as Deku breaks that illusion as well as breaks All For One's arms, which is implying that Deku, showing the rainbow on his arm, is planning to pass on the rest of One For All to All For One to try and destroy him completely, as we eventually cut once more into the mind of All For One. And this is where it gets the true reveal of how All For One felt about Yoichi, his younger brother, and how his brother is about to be no more, with the anime adding a scene from earlier on in the season from episode 4 of All For One and Yoichi reading the comic book, really emphasizing the idea that while he is evil, he is still very much human, and while he did view Yoichi as a property of him, he still cared for him in his own twisted way. And that now that he has lost him, he has truly lost everything, which leads to him being destroyed from both sides, inside the vestige as well as outside as well. And the anime added the destruction of All For One by Tomura in the inner vestiges and Deku in this moment spectacularly, while also confirming that Deku did strike All For One with a killing blow, which, while may seem unexpected, is actually probably more in line with Deku's characters than people believe, because Deku has talked about how if worse comes to worse, he is still willing to put down Tomura, or in this case, All For One, but he still attempted to Watt and save him, which we get revealed he kind of does in this episode. Because after that final blow, this is where we get the conversation between Deku and Tomura, which remains relatively the same between both the anime and the manga. However, the anime does add context to how Tomura survived by actually showing the remnant vestige of Nana, which we are told had a conversation with Tomura, which was able to keep him alive inside of All For One taking over his body. And while we don't necessarily see the conversation between them, just the image of Nana's vestige still remaining versus all the other vestiges disappearing really solidifies that idea and makes it a little bit more palatable to me and most likely other My Hero Academia fans. But like I said, the dialogue itself between Deku and Tomura remains the same, as Tomura relents that he was a child to the very end and was unable to truly destroy anything, while Deku, very much not forgiving what Tomura did, finally understands him and still sought to try and save him. And as Tomura leaves Deku with a final message to Spinner that Tomura Shigaraki fought to destroy to the very end, we actually do get some nice added changes between the anime and the manga. Because the anime decided to use Tomura with his light blue hair that we saw from seasons 1 all the way up to seasons 4 and 5, versus the white hair, which was always the case that Tomura had in the manga. However, the reasoning why the anime kept the blue hair is the implication that this image of Tomura that we see that fist bumps Deku before he disappears is actually the Tomura before he fully re-unlocked decay, where in the anime when he did that, that's when his hair went completely white, showing that he has regressed to the person that he was, but this is something that is still very much who he is. He is not the child Tenko, he is still very much Tomura Shigaraki, but now he's probably at the point where he was most likely at his truest form without the influence truly consuming him of All for One. And finally, the last thing that the anime does to improve upon what we got in the manga, especially towards the end of manga chapter 423, is that it fully adapts the cause and the effect of the sky being cleared. Because the anime adds the animation of Deku's attack with that rainbow coloring burst of energy flying upward, piercing the sky and clearing it of that rainy day. And how Deku clearing the sky is a very beautiful moment, and how this is very much symbolically and literally the end of the darkness brought upon by All for One, and literally clearing a way for a brighter future as the episode ends. And yeah, this is the 8th episode of My Hero Academia, and actually the end of the war and the battles for the series, which I know, crazy. We're only on episode 8 with 3 more episodes left, and the fighting has already ended, with the next episode beginning something that is actually not common for shonen manga and anime of this ilk, with an actual epilogue. But yeah, this is going to be a long video, but I'm glad that I was able to do it. And maybe starting from the next episodes, I may actually do more reactions to it, as well as doing the breakdowns as well. But yeah, overall, I love this episode. This might be my favorite episode so far. I love the small changes made to it. I love how the episode really used the music well, especially You Say Run. I love the even small action bits being very well animated, as well as just overall the emotional feel of this episode really causing me to realize that My Hero Academia is ending, but it's ending not with a whimper, but with an explosion of fireworks, energy, and emotion. But hey, that's just my thoughts on the episode. Let me ask you this. How did you feel about the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And was there anything that I may have missed? And if I did, leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!